It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, July 10th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that's really going to dig deep on Jett Luchanko today.
Wonder if he knows the Paul McCartney song, Jett.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, we are going to be joined by Ian McLaren of Locked On Boston Bruins. He's from Guelph and sees the Storm a lot, and so is going to provide some really good insight into Jett Luchanko for us, and also give us a little bit of scoop on Anthony Richard, who happened to be in the Bruins organization before he was just signed with the Flyers. So that'll be a nice bonus. In the meantime, we are starting to hear rumblings of potential Phantoms signings, and those were some of the things that were kind of left over amongst the to-do list. And one of the things we talked about was Cooper Meredy, and how important it was to get him back with the Phantoms. According to Inside AHL Hockey, he is going to be signing an AHL deal with the Phantoms. No official word from them yet, but this is what is being reported, and that's good to hear.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, they may have ranked him 20th, but to the Flyers, he's probably ranked third as far as importance to get him back, because you need some of those veterans that are proven scorers, can do different things, can play up and down the lineup, and he's one of them.
Yeah, and another returnee is supposedly Parker Gahagan in net on an AHL contract, which is interesting, just given the scenario with Cal Peterson and Alexei Kolosov. Now, Gahagan bounced back and forth between Reading and Lehigh Valley, so it's probably expected that he'll do the same.
Or he's the Kolosov backup just in case. He's the backup plan.
Yeah, I think that'll be the case. And then Inside AHL Hockey is also reporting that they are going to sign a left-handed defenseman in Xavier Bernard, who was with Bakersfield this past year, and also their ECHL affiliate in Fort Wayne, where he wasn't really a scorer. Sounds like a defensive defenseman.
I mean, it's certainly they could never use someone like Mason Millman or anything. It's better to go get this guy, right? Okay.
Well, it seems like maybe he'll spend more time in Reading than he will in Lehigh Valley, but we'll see.
Yeah,
see. You can have as many guys as you want in the AHL, so we'll see where this
can. But the thing is, he's a big guy, and they're just going straight big now, and it annoys me because you should never do that as like a blanket.
Yeah. Again, just to stay tuned on that one. No official word yet. But
right.
The other note we have to unfortunately make is hearing about the sad news about Tony Voce, who passed away recently, only 43 years old, was part of that Calder Cup winning team for the Phantoms when they were in Philly, but he was a local kid who wound up playing for the Phantoms, which was super cool, and just so sad and so young.
Yeah, I covered that whole season. That was the lockout, and I covered that 05 season. It was a fun team. He was a good guy. He was a local guy, so fans looked up to him. They used to give him a pretty fair amount of push because he was a local guy. Pretty good player, Yeah, I remember him, and it really stinks. And that was a fun team. Like, I got to know Riley Cote really well from that team, and yeah, that was it's a moment in time, and yeah, so this is sad.
Yeah, it seems like everybody who knew him really loved him and appreciated him. And
Yeah.
so sending our best wishes to his family and friends right now. But yeah, just awful, awful news. We are going to talk all things Jett Luchanko on today's show. And here is our conversation with Ian McLaren on that subject. So normally we would be talking to Ian McLaren about the Boston Bruins, but he just so happens to live in Guelph and gets to see the Storm a lot and knows a lot about Jett Luchanko. So welcome, Ian, to talk not the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, thanks for having me. Always great to talk about the hometown junior team as well.
So I think like the biggest question is, what should Flyers fans be most excited about with this pick, and what does he bring to the table for the Flyers?
I mean, yeah, he brings so much to the table. I mean, I'm not going to lie and say I expected him to go as high in the draft as he did as host of Locked On Bruins. I was certainly hoping that he would drop down to 25th and perhaps be reunited with his former Guelph Storm teammate in Matt Poitras, but he is just such a versatile forward that did so many good things for the Guelph Storm last year. He's the prototypical natural athlete. He brings so much energy and positivity to the group. It was a bit of a weird season for the Storm last year, with highlighted by the fact that they really did think that Matt Poitras was going to be back. Instead, he was kept up in Boston, and that really put a wrench in their plans and kind of put them in more of a transition season earlier than they may have wanted to be in. But Luchanko came out. He led the team in scoring with 74 points, 54 assists, and that really is one of the highlights of his game for sure, is his playmaking ability. Not unlike Poitras, who he played with the year before. He's got great vision. He can spot seams here and there. The Storm last year, their system was kind of all over the place, and there wasn't really. They just looked discombobulated quite a bit, and that came to fruition, or came to the fore, in the fact that they made a coaching change for this upcoming season, hiring former NHLer Corey Stillman, who was an assistant with Arizona. He's coming in, and he's going to bring kind of that more professional approach to the Guelph Storm. He's been pursuing a dream of becoming a head coach in the NHL, kind of moving down from an assistant to kind of work his way up as a head coach. And I think he's really going to be kind of a real positive impact. You look at Corey Stillman and who he was as a player. There's a lot of similarities between him and Luchanko, I think, as a versatile forward who might not blow the doors off offensively in terms of like pushing for 100 points, but he can chip in, playmaking, great vision, and I really think that he's going to have a real positive effect on his development coming up here in Guelph this coming season.
Yeah, I remember Stillman. I think his nickname was Cush. You know, it's funny. His weight was 190 and Luchanko's 195. Now he's 6 foot. We know that Jett is not 6 foot, even though he's getting credit for that in certain places. But I can see the Poitras thing really throwing off the team. What I was going to ask is, I think it's going to be unfair seeing Consta Helenius for the Sabres, at least in the AHL this year, and maybe at some point getting an NHL look. And you got Luchanko, who's picked ahead of him. He's going to be in Guelph, and he might be there next year too. You know, so let's talk about his development. It's definitely on a different cycle than someone like Helenius, who, you know, whose floor is much higher. And that, you know, I think that's okay. Like, that happens with players.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't even turned 18 yet. He'll turn 18 in August, on August 21st. So yeah, you think about maybe getting a taste of his first. I don't know if I would assume he'll be at Flyers training camp, but kind of getting a little taste and then gradually working up. I can easily see him getting a couple more seasons back here in Guelph before he makes the jump, and that's okay. Different
Right.
players develop at different trajectories. Again, 13th. I was a bit surprised he went that high, but
Me too.
I think the Flyers must see something that they really like in him. Obviously, they drafted Isaac Ratcliffe, who was captain of the team when they won back in 2019. So there's some connections there with the Storm. So they trust the organization, and seeing how they have developed some players, including Patra. Nick Suzuki had a brief time here playing with Ratcliffe in that championship season. Robbie Fabry, Tyler Bertuzzi. There's a bunch of guys that are making impacts at the NHL level for the that have come through Guelph. So it can be a really solid program, and obviously the Flyers trust that and trust their development of Luchanko, who, like you said, probably will have couple more seasons here in Guelph, and I'm really happy about that as a Storm fan and someone who goes down to cover the team, because he's really fun to watch, and also a great kid off the ice as well. That can't be understated. He's a real really, even though he's still young, he's only got a couple years under his belt. He's really stepped up and become a guy that this team is looking to build around for the next couple of years as they try to contend here in the OHL.
We'll have more with Ian on Jett Luchanko and more coming up next. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. I think that is going to be an interesting part of his development, as well as the leadership side of things, and being, a center with high expectations down the road in the NHL. You need to kind of model that in junior. And given that he'll be there for the next couple of years, is he going to be a leader on this team? Does he have potential to get a letter this upcoming season? Like, where does he fit in there?
Yeah, I mean, I could easily see him getting an A as early as this upcoming season. Again, just he'll be turning like 18 right around the beginning of OHL training camps. I could definitely see him emerging as a guy that they turn to as captain. It's a new coaching group, like I said. Storm GM George Burnett said that they were bringing Corey Stillman in because of his wealth of experience at the NHL level as a mentor, a teacher of young players. They really highlighted that. His desire to be a head coach and to imprint his style and his influence on these young guys. I really think those two are going to work pretty well together, and I wouldn't be surprised if Stillman spots that leadership potential pretty quick here in his time with, if he hasn't already, in discussions with Jett and some other players here in Guelph.
A question about another Guelph player. When the Flyers are going to get Michkov this year, and at some point they're going to need to get somebody to play with him. There is a pretty fiery guy who's not signed to a contract, Max Nemestikov, who plays there. I kind of wonder, do you think secretly the Flyers are kind of keeping an eye on him?
I mean, yeah, potentially. I believe he was at the Jets development camp, as his brother plays in Winnipeg.
Yep.
And he was, speaking of that kind of connection. He came in a trade a couple years ago. He has excelled on the top line for Guelph. Not drafted. He's 20 years old now. He'll be entering his 5th OHL season. So I really think, he has a chance to make an impression. Obviously, one of the knocks on him is his size. He's only 5'7", I think.
Yeah.
But he's got a great motor. He can put the puck in the net. I think he should be a guy who is on the radar for obviously Winnipeg, probably Philadelphia as well, if they want to kind of take advantage of that connection with Luchanko. But he's a guy certainly who could step in and really surprise people as a guy who's been undervalued, probably because of his size.
Going back to Luchanko, you talked about his scoring this past season with the 74 points in 68 games. That's pretty high for a guy his age, right? And so you wonder, like, has he peaked? Like, where's there to go for him here in terms of building on that?
I mean, I think the obvious place to look at in terms of growth would be upping his goal scoring total. He, as a younger guy, playmaking abilities on point, but you can maybe see where there's room for growth in terms of being more assertive with the puck on his own, just firing the puck more at will, driving the net maybe a bit more, and really upping those goal totals. I think 30 goals this season is a realistic goal for him. And, with a guy like him who does so many things well, the sky's really the limit, especially since he's so young and already put up these kind of numbers as a 17-year-old. I think he could really boost his goal totals and perhaps challenge for, maybe 90 or even 100 points here in the OHL this season, depending on who he's able to play with and things like that. But I really think he could develop even more as that kind of not necessarily just a playmaker, but also a finisher in his own right as well.
Yeah. One other thing about Jett, he had a little bit of trouble in camp. And I do like his speed, but it's really just straight ahead speed. His two-step explosiveness isn't there. And so do you feel like that if that gets into his game, that's what you're talking about as far as, because once he was getting over the blue line, a lot of guys were able to strip the puck from him because he wasn't blowing past them.
Yeah, that's one of the knocks on him for sure, is kind of his perhaps limited puck skills and the ability to create on his own instead of passing it off. Obviously, he's finding guys in good spots, but the ability to kind of, obviously to take your game to the next level, there's that ability to develop the skill to weave in and out, to be able to beat players one-on-one, to have those clean zone entries, zooming past defensemen. That's definitely one of the areas that he can work on for sure, and what could separate him from being a projected third line kind of checking role who can chip in offensively to developing into a guy who could step into the top 6 at some point.
Luchanko has played as the 1C on this team. Do you see that staying the case this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Yeah, he'll continue to emerge as the leader, the offensive driver for this team. Again, going back to earlier, he was not projected to be the 1C. That was, earmarked for Matt Poitras last season, who, had he been in the OHL, could have challenged for the league scoring title. So it was kind of a bit of a learning curve for Luchanko as well, going up against teams' top defensive players. And he should be, even more ready for that this coming season, having kind of been thrown into the fire a bit earlier than expected as a 17-year-old.
And Anthony, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. As a bonus, because you do cover the Boston Bruins, the Flyers organization signed Anthony Richard to a two-way contract this year, and he did get some games with the Bruins this year. So,
Mhm.
what can you tell us about him and what does he have 4C potential? I guess is what we're asking.
Yeah, I mean, the Bruins were so loaded in, or maybe not loaded, but they had many options in the bottom six. And Richard looked, he looked pretty good in his 9-game stint with the Bruins. He had a goal, a couple assists, but there was another kind of tweener that overtook him on the depth chart in Justin Brazeau, who really emerged as well. A guy with a similar career arc, bouncing back between the A and the NHL, not really being able to crack it. And he took kind of that spot along with some other younger guys. Richard played very well in Providence, 25 goals, 55 points in 59 AHL games. And he has been a pretty good AHLer in past seasons. He had 67 points with Laval, Montreal organization. Before that, almost 50 points with Milwaukee. So he's kind of that guy that, kind of your classic in-betweener. He's probably too good to be in the AHL full-time, but also he has yet to kind of establish himself as a full-time NHLer night in and night out. So there's definitely an opportunity there. I think he could definitely grab that. It's just up to him to kind of take advantage of that opportunity. The fact that it is a two-way deal would suggest that the Flyers kind of are on the same page there, not quite ready to commit to a one-way NHL deal, but certainly, if all goes well and there's room there, he could be a guy who contributes. Maybe not a full 82 games you'll get out of him consistently, but someone who can chip in and provide some physicality there in a pinch as well.
All right, good to know. Thanks, Ian, so much for joining us and some great information on Luchanko. And hopefully, we'll get to talk some Bruins
Yeah,
as we
definitely.
get closer to the season.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Ian McLaren. So good to talk to him. He's such a smart guy covering the Bruins primarily, but good to get that bonus coverage with him being up in Guelph.
Yeah, you can never know too much.
Yeah, it is a good town for sure. Up next will be our mailbag answering your questions on a lot of fun topics.
We absolutely miss hockey, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. FanDuel has odds for Major League Baseball, Wimbledon tennis, the Paris Games with over-unders on medal counts by country, Euros, Copa America, and so much more. Maybe bet Pete Alonso to win the home run derby. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
All right, digging into our mailbag. At Olson Math was responding to our draft and review episode. And, when we talked about, that this was a draft class we were going to have to wait a little while to evaluate on. So they wanted to know, what do you consider to be a successful draft? Hextall's 2017 draft had 7 players play at least one NHL game, which seems impressive, but only Cates and Frost are playing meaningful games anymore. What's a metric you use to judge a draft?
Well, the first thing is if you can get a couple players to play somewhere around 200 games, it's very successful. So Cates and Frost are on track to do that. The fact that they had that many players play is successful. But the bigger thing is getting in somewhere around 200 games. But that's a very successful draft, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Berry wanted to know a little bit about Carson Bjarnason. He had watched some of the scrimmage that the Flyers streamed for development camp and said, I'm a little concerned about Bjarnason's play. He wasn't square to the puck on many occasions and liked to favor his left leg or pad. Where do you see Bjarnason fitting in, if at all?
Yeah, I think he strikes me so far as maybe an NHL backup until I see more. I know in his head he's probably got that number one pedigree, but he's going to have to prove it. I can't go by anything I saw in that scrimmage. Although I'll tell you, he made some really good saves at times, but he was just up against it. So I would say don't hold that against him. Let's see what he does in the regular season this year.
Yeah, I think, part of it too with him is that we haven't seen him much with good teams around him.
Right.
And it is a team game, and while there are, important things that the goaltender can do, I think, the fact that he was able to have even remotely close to the season that he did with Brandon this past year, considering that they weren't that great to begin with. I think is a pretty good sign. And I think, with goaltenders, they tend to develop a little later, as we know. And so I think he has what it takes. It's just, can he put it all together when the time is right? And
Yeah,
that's the thing with goalies. It's about timing in a lot of
it
ways.
is.
Like you look at Sam Ersson, I bet he didn't expect to be the number one goalie on an NHL team
No, not
so
as quick as he
soon.
did. I will tell you though,
Yeah.
when I used to rank all the prospects, and I don't do it as much anymore because I'm all these shows. I had him as the number one guy, passing Stanstrom. Once in that camp, in that rookie camp, when he held up the trophy, and he was at that point, I was like, okay, he's ahead of Sandstrom, so I at least knew that much.
Yeah, and I think we know a lot more now about his mental toughness, right?
Yes,
And that's something we know less about with Bjarnason at this point.
it's
We
true.
know, he played for Canada in the U18s, but I think we just need to see more from him.
Yeah,
I'm less concerned about individual little detail things, because those are things goaltenders work on and kind of update their style a little bit to adjust to the level that they're playing. Flyered Up wanted to know, what was your opinion of Santeri Solku at Dev
first off, I love any fan base that wants to know about their 7th round picks. I do.
Camp?
That makes me happy because a lot of times people are like, I don't care about anything past the 2nd round. I watched him. I felt like his hands are good. He's definitely a goal scorer. You could see that. He's a little slow, I think, for the NHL. I think he's also a guy that you wouldn't see him for another 3 or 4 years. I think he's like a guy that gets here around 23 and you see what you got. But you can tell he's a little bit of a goal scorer, and you got to see if that cultivates. He had 17 last year, but it's Mestis, right? I want to see him do more
Right.
in higher leagues, but at least it does show that he has some of that ability.
Right. I think that's the real key here is, can he move up in
Right.
the European leagues to get better competition and see where he does there. I think at Dev Camp, it was interesting. He was out there with Heikki Ruohonen, who we talked about earlier this week. I think they just put the fins together for the sake of it. But you could see the difference between the two of them, that Ruohonen just was a little step ahead of Solku on what they were doing out there. And so that's where I think, your point about the skating, he just has to get faster, and he has to be able to adjust to a higher level of
Yeah,
competition, in my
absolutely.
opinion. William wrote in and said, was commenting about Russ's feelings about John Tortorella and playing and in-game development, and says, the more I hear Russ point out the impact of Torts on this, the more I'm reminded of the grading that Clark and Hitch experienced. Clark would get a scoring winger, and Hitch would turn around and play them on the 3rd and 4th line, prompting Bob Clark to comment on it. I get him a scorer, and he turns them into a checking wing. Do you see this kind of dynamic developing?
I think this year could be the year that starts to happen. And so, yeah, I think it's a possibility. And, all I'll say about, John's going to have to change a little this year. If he doesn't, I think it's going to be a rocky road for everybody. And then, you could read into that however you want.
Yeah, so far they're on the same page. They're in
Right.
lockstep, as you like to say. And, they haven't really shown any outward signs that there's any differences of opinion, or Bear doesn't question Tortorella at all. And I think, depending on how this season goes, maybe halfway through, we just got to start to look for signs of that, if there's any bumpy roads with the on ice play, and go from there. I can't say it'll happen. I can't say it won't happen. But I think you're right, Russ, in the sense that this is the year that we could start seeing that if it were to, if the cracks were starting to appear in the relationship. I would look
Yeah.
for them about halfway through this season. But again, we'll see. Could be nothing, could be something. We'll go
Yeah.
from there. Ben wants to know who from this 2024 draft class will be the next to get an ELC.
Now I don't. I've been trying to keep up with that. I'm going to say Tisha Ginla. I don't think he signed it yet. And
I think
so,
from the Flyers draft class.
oh, he means from the Flyers. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if they're going to do it. I don't know if they're going to do it with anybody else right now. Camp broke. I think they're going to wait. I think they needed to do it with Luchanko. I think they're going to wait. I think until in season to see how some of the other guys do. That's my feeling.
I think so too, that maybe like late in the season, maybe Spencer Gill will be the
Right.
next
Gill's
one
the
to
one
get
that's
it.
that's flopping in my mind, and it's like, yeah, they probably want to make sure they see a little more out of him because of what happened with Canada and not being shown. Like if he starts off hot, I could see them doing it.
Yeah, I think that's just what they're waiting for because there's like that little tiny thing of
Yes.
like, well, what is Canada seeing that we're not? And frankly, I don't know that that's a good question to ask because
I
you never know what's
agree.
going on with Hockey Canada and their
No.
choices and decisions.
Sam was
But
pretty honest when I asked him about it. So Sam Moran,
yeah,
that is. Yeah.
yeah, Hockey Canada is a mystery black hole to me. But what are you going to do? That will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions you want us to answer on the show, let us know on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.